Considering that we are a small group, maybe it would be maybe even better if you all get in the first row, or those who wish to, so we can have a good conversation. And there are a few people who are going to join us, but it's probably time to start, because I don't want to deprive anyone of the possibility to intervene. Scusi, stiamo cominciando. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to our session on children and parents in prison. As Renata Winter mentioned in her intervention in the panel this morning, this is actually panel 4, and I see that the number is not very high, but as she put it, this is the last but not the least of the issues to be tackled today, and we are actually very privileged because I have around the table experts from ministries, from civil society, international organizations. So we are very happy and confident that the outcome of this panel is going to be very concrete and enable all of us to learn, exchange, also make networks to develop best practice on this issue. My name is Chiara Damo. I'm the head of the Fundamental Rights Unit in DG Justice. So Margaret Tweed works in my team and heads the Rights of the Child team. And I'm joined by Tommaso Chiamparino, who some of you had contacts with in the organizing this panel. And I'm privileged to co-chair this session with Nancy Lux, who I have to thank very much because she's going to bring all her energy and expertise in the substantial discussions. I also take the occasion to thank the COPE network. Some of you are members, national members of the COPE networks, and we also have a representative of COPE here in the room, I believe, for the good advice and really the help they put for us in this forum. The issue, and I'm going to be very quick, as was said yesterday, is important, and as other thematics, we dramatically lack data, reliable data, so we base ourselves on estimates. And this is an issue which I would like also to maybe that you can pick up in your interventions. We're very eager to also understand nationally how do you make your statistics, and I mean if there are best practices in this context. In terms of the EU, the European Union competence in the matter as such, children with parents in prison is limited. We don't have specific EU regulations or directives. At the same time, we play a facilitator role within our remit of rights of the child and criminal justice and child-friendly justice. And we do support, for instance, financially networks like COPE or projects which aim at enabling and easing child protection and exchange of best practices, leading to better protection of the child and the realization in practice of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and the UN Conventions on the Rights of the Child. And we also picked this topic because we hope that the outcome of this panel is going to feed, on one hand, into the work that one of our panelists will refer to of the Council of Europe. Council of Europe is meant to issue a recommendation on children in prisons next year. And we hope that the material and the interventions are going to feed into the UN global study that Manfred Novak presented yesterday. So that was my brief introduction. Before we start, I also want to give you some housekeeping. We have some time. I think it will be possible for all of you to intervene, and I maybe think that after the coffee break we could also have a second round of questions to our speakers. But I'm mindful of the time, and I was given these terrible things. So, not to intimidate anyone, but for our speakers, you have a maximum of 15 minutes. I mean, in my experience, if you talk more than 12, people are kind of slightly getting impatient. So I will do the traffic light for you. You also have your app you can use. You have. It is interesting, this app, also because we tried to save trees. So you find a lot of material in there. All the background documents for this conference. You will find the international standards which are specific to the issue we are dealing with today. The collection of data we could come up with on the issue itself. So I really advise you to download it. I'm anti-digital, but I manage so I can show you in the coffee break if need be. The app also has the possibility for you to ask questions, but given the short number, I would advise that we do it directly. The questions in the app, which you can keep in mind also for the interventions in the meeting, what is the most important messages that you have heard from the speakers and you want to develop? What is still missing in the discussion you are listening to? And then, of course, any other question that you want to put to the panelists. So, without further ado, I'll pass the floor to my co-chair, Nancy Lukes from Families Outside COPE Network Scotland.
Nope. There we go. Excellent. Okay. Good morning. Good to be here. When Chiara and I spoke yesterday, she said that she would be the logistical chair who deals with all the rules and keeping everyone to time and all the introductions, and I would be the expert chair. But I'm very conscious in sitting here that everybody in this room is an expert in this particular field, so we'll have a lot to learn from each other. Just to tell you briefly about Families Outside, where I work in Scotland, it's a national Scottish charity that works specifically for children and families affected by imprisonment. And we do that through direct support, but also through training of professionals and through development of policy and practice. We're doing a lot of work on data collection around identifying who children of prisoners are and finding ways of making sure they have information and support, and doing work in schools, working with teachers specifically about what they can do to support children. We're also doing a project with the Prison Reform Trust at the moment, looking at the impact of the imprisonment of mothers. So that's some ongoing work that we're involved in. But I'm also here, and more particularly here, as a member of the board of COPE, of Children of Prisoners Europe. COPE is a member-based network based in Paris, which works exclusively to promote child-focused practice regarding the rights of children with a parent in prison. And so we do that through exchange of information and good practice, and we spearhead collective action across Europe and through our affiliate members internationally. So COPE works closely with the EU and is largely funded by the EU since 2013. Some of that work includes work with the Council for Penological Cooperation on the Council of Europe recommendation for children with imprisoned parents, which is scheduled to go to the Committee of Ministers in January. That recommendation is accompanied by an explanatory report and a Council of Europe questionnaire on child-friendly prison practices. So again, something that we can share across the network. There is an estimated 2.1 million children in the Council of Europe with a parent in prison on any given day, and 800,000 of those are within EU countries. Again, these are estimates, and I think a message that we've had throughout the conference is the fact that we do need more definite information if we're going to develop informed practice. So that's a big issue and probably something we'll be discussing throughout this morning. children of prisoners are a very hidden group. The background paper was interesting to read on a number of levels. It mentioned a number of the articles within the UNCRC that were relevant to all the children that we're discussing through this event, regarding the discrimination about the status of parents, 3.12. But what it didn't mention was Article 9, which was specifically about the right that children have of maintaining contact with a parent, and that's something that's particularly relevant to children of prisoners. I was also interested to see that the section on children of prisoners in the background paper was very, very short, with all 3 council framework decisions referring mainly to young people who offend rather than young people who have a parent in prison. As Chiara mentioned, there are no specific EU regulations or directives relating to children with parents in prison. Only the Commission recommendation spoke specifically to the issue of children with imprisoned parents. So it just shows how easily these children are hidden or subsumed, kind of absorbed into other pieces of legislation where they're referred to in passing rather than the main focus. One example we see within the UK is some work that Dr. Shona Minson has conducted recently from the University of Oxford, where she notes that in family courts, courts looking at divorce and child custody, the focus is entirely on the child and the rights of the child. But if you look at adult criminal justice courts, the child is completely absent from those proceedings and decisions, despite the tremendous impact these decisions have on them. So I'm looking forward to hearing the input from the speakers and the discussion that we'll have over the course of the day, and just wanted to bear in mind Renata Winter's comment about what can we do to bring added value to this, especially in view of the regular criticism that we get about what the added value might be. So I'll hand back over to Chiara and leave the rest to you.
Thank you. I have the pleasure to introduce as a first speaker Linnea from Sweden. Linnea is part of the BUF youth group, and she kindly accepted to give a personal experience. I have to ask all participants, please do not record or tweet about her experience. She's a child still, and her privacy needs to be preserved. So thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, my name is Linnea and I am 14 years old. I come from Sweden. One day when I was 9 years old and my little brother was 6, my mom came and picked us up from school. I thought it was a normal day in our family and that Dad was at his job. My mom told us that we were going to visit our grandfather to have some afternoon tea with him. She told us that she needed to tell us something important. She told us directly and honestly that Dad had been sent to jail because he did something he wasn't allowed to. He was going to be gone for a little while, but we were going to visit him. After I got to know what had happened to my father, I didn't dare to tell anybody about it. It was like a shock. I barely didn't know or understand what had happened. Some days after, the shock turned into sadness. Every time I come home from school, this house felt very empty without my dad. I had a lot of questions and thoughts but I decided that I wanted to wait and make those questions directly to my father when I was able to see him. I didn't want to get stuck on images, and I had pictures of jail based on what I have seen on TV. I didn't want to focus on the questions like, is my dad okay? Is he walking around with a big globe around his foot? Does he have orange or white clothes with stripes? So I chose to try to hide my negative feelings and bury them deep inside of me and try to focus on the positive things like school and my friends. After 2 long weeks, I finally got the chance to visit my dad in jail and to ask him all the questions I had. It felt really good to see him. 2 weeks felt like a very long time apart of him. It was a little scary to go and visit jail for the first time, but as soon as I saw that he was they were taking care of him and that jail did not look like in TV, I felt a very big relief. Shortly after the first time visiting our dad, we started to go to BUF. There we got support and the opportunity to meet other children that had their father or mother in jail. That made me feel like I wasn't the only one. I learned a lot and stopped having negative thoughts about jail or people that were in jail. Not all of them are dangerous. They might have done things that are not okay, but that doesn't make them dangerous. I also learned that I don't have to be afraid of speaking out about my father's situation. So I decided to tell my friends. I was very honest with them and they understood everything. They were very supportive and didn't make any questions. My father was in jail for 2 years. We used to visit him once a week after he had an electronic tag for a while. I didn't know what an electronic tag was. The only thing I had in mind was that my father was finally coming home. The only thing I thought was hard was that some of my friends' parents was hesitating to let my friends over as they didn't know who my father was. They only thought that he must have been bad as he had been in prison. Our relationship at home is like it has always been. I think that it is even better now. I think our relationship would have been very different if this hadn't happened. This has brought us together and we have a very good relationship. We see everything like something that belongs to the past and don't feel like talking about it. I always try to stay positive, but I obviously remember these years. It just doesn't affect me anymore. Nowadays I continue to go to booth. In the future I would like to help others in similar situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Linnea, and you're also an excellent speaker and right on time. So thank you for really bringing us at the heart of the matter. If you don't mind, with Nancy, we thought we would now give the floor immediately to Madeleine Kattel from the BUF organization in Sweden.
Thank you so much, Linnea. It was perfect. And thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you very much. My name is Madeleine Kattel, and I work for the NGO BUF, as Linnea mentioned. It's a national child rights organization in Sweden who works with children of prisoners. And we work within the community. So we support children that has their family members in prison, on remand prison, or on parole. We are located in 10 different areas in Sweden, and we work with direct support to children, and both individuals and in groups. As you heard by Linnea, there is a youth group that you can attend. For us, it's always very important that we assume that children are actors and co-operators in their all situations and relationships in which they are. They are active and competent subjects with their own thoughts, feelings, experience, ambitions, and needs. They need to know that they are unique individuals with their own right, but they are at the same time entitled to adult care and protection. We do it in our work. We listen to each and every child. We think that is particularly important. Even among siblings, we make time to listen to each and every one of them. We also think that it's very crucial that they participate in everything they do. We include them in decisions, in our boards, in annual planning, as reference groups, and try to be on what's happening right now. What's the key issues that the children want us to work with right now? For the sake of the children, we also work with indirect support, such as support to caregivers during the whole legal process, with specific emphasis on during arrest and release, as that's particularly hard times. And we visit all prisons and remand prisons in Sweden in order to increase knowledge with the imprisoned parents so that they can help the child from the prison. We also run parental groups in prison based on a manual that we developed together with the PPS, the correctional system. And we also have a national helpline and chat, which we have seen is very helpful for children, that they can call and also chat with us anonymous. And it's regardless on where you live, so you can always stay in contact. You can, maybe I'll just do this. It's a nice picture. This is a picture just to show that we really want children to have equal support regardless on where they live in Sweden, and that is often not the case. We work to strengthen children's rights, and we work to raise awareness. We believe that Sweden needs to do some changes in order to comply with the CRC, and we are suggesting for the moment, following 3 changes: that all children should be entitled to support no matter or regardless where in the country they live, and that all municipals must take responsibility so that children with imprisoned family members are offered personal and individual support, regardless of them having contact or not with the imprisoned parent. We also demand a review or enforcement of legislation that has to be done to prevent children from being forgotten, or that no one has responsibility, which is often the case today. We have an expression that you fall between chairs. I think you say fall between cracks in England. So we think that's really important, and in that review we also want them to map and do a survey to know how many children there are. In Sweden today, we estimate it's 30,000 children that are affected by parental imprisonment.
30,000.
Yeah. So it's quite a number, but the number is still counted only for children with parents in prison, not siblings in prison, not other family members, just parents. I'm not going to talk that much about, because there's so many in the rooms that know a lot, but I was thinking that I would remind you that the children are voiceless and they're neglected, they're uncounted, and the responsibility for the group is often unclear, and the rights and needs are many times not fulfilled. When we talk about them in general, I would like you to consider that the group is not heterogeneous. It's individual children with individual rights and needs, and they have a right to be heard in any decision that impacts their life. And I also would like you to consider that they're equally often as bad to have a sibling in prison. We meet very many children with young siblings in prison, or young older brother and sister in prison, and I think sometimes that's even worse, because they are strong role models for the younger siblings, and often siblings share friends and school environment, so they cannot escape from it anywhere. So I would like you to consider that children with family members are the topic we need to address. Adults cannot decide who is the important person in a child's life. We know that children's life situation is affected by parental imprisonment, and the majority of the children are affected negatively. The extent of the impact varies from child to child, and it's due to a combination of social, family, and cultural factors. A significant factor to consider is how family situation was before the imprisonment, and if the child has other risk factors from the parents, such as crime, abuse, or mental health issues. The research raises 3 themes that, despite the diversity within the group, unite the children. And it's that imprisonment of the parent family member often means a separation and an ambiguous loss for the child. And when I say ambiguous loss, it means that it's a loss that you cannot get like if someone dies, you get support from your neighbors, your network, and people are maybe baking a cake and coming to you, and you can talk about it. But when it's some biggest loss, it's because it's so shameful to have a parent in prison. And you're secret about it. You don't really get the support. The imprisonment of the parent and family member is associated with stigma and often fear of stigma, shame, and the associated secrecy. And the imprisonment often involves structural, caring, and economic change within the family. We know a lot about risk, but we also know a lot about needs. So what do they need? We know a lot. We know what children need when it comes to support and resources. In order to children to be able to handle their everyday situation and handle this particular situation and its consequence in a constructive manner, they need access to external resources in form of social support and adequate information, and their right needs to be met by adults in their closest environment as well as in society at large. A review of literature and research, we've done our own. It's a research knowledge-based overview of 31 studies made from US and Europe since the 2000 and forward. And the literature raises 4 relevant themes regarding needs of the children. The 4 needs are concrete and age-sensitive information about their situation, and open communication. A good contact with a detained parent, when it's, of course, for the child's best interest, and a present and well-functioning parent caregiver who have the ability to collaborate around the child despite their own conflicts. Emotional and personal support, and a respectful response from family and network. And when I say respectful response, that means a non-judgmental and authentic treatment from professional and staff, which emphasize why it's so important that our professionals get training in this issue. It's so many children that I meet that when they tell a teacher or someone near that they have a parent in prison, they are met with the first question they get is, what did he do? Instead of, how did that feel for you? How does it feel, and how can I do anything for you? So it's really, really crucial. I just want to say that Linnea's story, as you heard, was a very good example of when a child's needs and rights are met. In her story, we'll find all protective factors that research highlight for a positive outcome. It's also a good example of a good collaboration between parents, NGO, and prison service. Her caregiver took a good responsibility and showed strength when they acting directly and gave Linnea the information that she needed. And they also helped her talking to her father quite immediately, which we also see is important for children to have a quick contact with their imprisoned parents. So they can also see how his life was, and also ask him questions. And we were also involved with the father, as we always visit all the prisons, and it's really good that the NGOs can help from within inside. Just stop there. As we know what children need today, we know how to strengthen them in general, and we also know that by ensuring that their rights and needs are fulfilled, it will not only benefit the child, it will also benefit the society, as it's crime preventive, it reduces future mental illness and sense of alienation. Despite of that, they're still overlooked, and it's still very unclear responsibilities. And I think I will just skip that. Of course, I think that the community must take a much bigger responsibility than what they do today. Of course, our prison service need to take responsibility as an authority, and they should take responsibility for the children in accordance to CRC. But the community really has to step up, because the children are not in prison. They are in our communities, in our daycares, in our school systems. That's where the real support has to be. I'm just going to share a good example from the correctional system in Sweden, actually, because they've done something really good. They have taken out a handbook, or guidelines for child perspective. And we worked together with them and also with the Child Ombudsman to get these together. And they really taken a big step, because, for example, on national level, it says that all co-workers or staff within PPS must have base knowledge of children's rights, meaning knowledge of CRC and Article 3, the child's best, and the use of this in practical. That all workers must attend to a special training, e-learning course, I don't know what you call it, in this, to use this in child perspective. And all must know about routines for reporting to social service in case of neglect. They all have to consider children when taking decisions as well. This also follows with routines for remand prison and parole, regulating visits, contact information, and etc. And also in Swedish prison we have child ombud in every unit, which makes it very good. But the last question is, of course, still, how do we get the community to take responsibility for this? Because it's, I will stop there. I know my time is out. So, yeah, but I think what we see is that the children really lack support within the community, and as not all children are in contact with their imprisoned parents, we need to find other ways. We need to secure that children get the information that they are entitled to have. And how do we do that? And who is responsible? Because sometimes, you know, parental rights are offered on top of children's rights. And as you have the rules of privacy, it's very hard when you know that the children needs the information. How do you go about that the parent wants their privacy, and criminal justice said they have to be secret, or that they can't share information about who's in the prison, but the children still needs the information. So how do we secure that? Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. I take your last point, how to secure that and the involvement of the community, for maybe the next speaker who can also follow it up from the perspective of the Justice Ministry. Important points you have made in your intervention. I retain, of course, the importance for individual support for each child, and also the fact that probably we shouldn't talk about children with parents, but with family in detention. I think it's a very good point you are making and reminding us of, and the importance of professional training for children. I just picked these three. Maybe Nancy, you want to develop?
I don't want to take too much time, but there were just, even, it was really helpful to have the four main issues highlighted, but even just looking at some of the practical issues, you talked about the need for support from arrest, but not everybody who's arrested goes to prison, so how you can actually make that focused without saying we can't talk to you because you might not go to prison, which seems a bit insensitive. So it's how to manage that on a practical level, as well as how we need to support the community to recognize this as important. So that was really helpful. We can discuss that more.
Do you have a pressing question on since we are not a big group, we can also afford, I mean, if you have a pressing question to Madeleine, I could take one, and then we move to the next. Otherwise, I think we have the opportunity after the first round. I'll then jump to the next speaker, Juliana Elena Carbunaru, probation inspector of the National Probation Directorate in the Ministry of Justice in Romania, who will speak about the Romanian experience.
Thank you. We've heard a lot about probation and alternatives yesterday and today, so my hope is that I will bring a little bit from my experience in our workshop. As we don't have too much time for introduction and I don't want to be warned with the traffic lights, I will move directly to the content of my presentation. As you see, the title of the presentation is Children Within and Beyond the Prison Bars. And this is because I want to touch in the next 14 minutes where we are now in my country in terms of legislation regarding the children in conflict with the criminal law, what we have achieved in the areas of alternatives to detention, what are the changes in children's situation in both prison and probation, some recent practices aiming to improve the situation of children and youngsters deprived of their liberty, recent initiatives aiming to improve the situation of the children with parents in prison, and a very short qualitative analysis of 11 interviews conducted with parents under probation supervision, because I think this is also a topic we have to explore. Let's see if I know how to use this. Perfect. My country has, according with the last validated census, a little bit less than 20 million people and approximately 4 million children. Not so many, according with the opinion of the experts in demography. My country is getting older every year. That means we have to pay a significant attention to our future generation. This year we celebrate 10 years of EU membership. But only some of us remember the path we followed to be here today. Action plans, benchmarks to be achieved, closing negotiation chapters, the justice chapter, commitments to fulfill the rule of law and to respect and guarantee the human rights, and fundamental freedoms, including from the perspectives of convicted people. Recently, in 2014, we succeeded to implement the most significant legislative reform of the criminal framework. 7 new laws entered into force at the same time that year: criminal code, criminal procedure code, laws for implementing the codes, a probation law, 2 laws for custodial and non-custodial sanctions, so a significant reform. This reform was made taking into account also the heavy overcrowding of penitentiaries and the need to create efficient alternatives to deprivation of liberty. The problem of overcrowded penitentiaries is far from being a local problem in my country. Most of the European countries are facing this problem and all the matters arising from this overcrowding. In this context, through the changes we made to our criminal code and criminal procedure code in line with the European standards, the magistrates have been encouraged to decide other types of measures, not only deprivation of liberty for both juveniles and adults. So they have to individualize the penalty closer to the community through probation. And this is what we have achieved. You can see with yellow we have the prison and with green we have probation. We started probation in 2001. That's why my graph included year 2002 in order to have a better representation of how we tackle overcrowded in my country. As you can see, it was a long and challenging journey. In 2002, when we established our service, we had approximately 50,000 people in prison. So probably 50,000 parents detained, and potentially several thousands of children influenced about this situation. As you can see, we made baby steps in developing the alternatives to detention, and we grow steadily until, if you see 2015 and 2016, after the legislative reform I described earlier. Now, we succeeded since 2015 to reverse the figures. So to have more people in probation comparing with people in prisons. That means more people exercising their competencies as fathers and mothers, preserving their roles as employees, neighbors, taxpayers, and less children, we hope, affected by the incarceration of their parents. And we did this because we believe in it, and we achieved this significant change of situation in my country. What about children in prison and probation? Regarding the children in conflict with the criminal law, we have learned our lessons earlier, and probation was the preferred sanction in the majority of the cases involving children, as you can observe in this chart. Again, with yellow we have prison, and with green we have probation. Moreover, as a consequence of the legislative reform from 2014, imprisonment for juveniles becomes extremely exceptional, and the range of other measures are regulated instead, all of them being under the control and supervision of the probation. There are new measures possible to be taken for juveniles according with the new criminal code, only educative measures, no punishments. And I really believe that the difference is not pure terminological, but also in substance between what we had prior to the reform and what we have now with measures for children in conflict with the criminal law. We have 4 non-custodial measures and 2 custodial, and you can observe the reflection of these measures, especially in 2015 and 2016. Even the number of children within the prison bars in educational centers and detention centers remain under 500 per year at the national level in my country. My colleagues from the prison administration invested a lot of efforts and money to improve the conditions for them, for the children and youngsters. The picture you saw at the beginning of my presentation, if you remember, was made during the renovation of the section in one of the facility for children and the youngster in the eastern part of Romania, a facility belonging to our National Administration of Penitentiaries. More than 3 million euros financed under the Norwegian financial mechanism have been invested in that facility, mainly for improve the working conditions, the conditions in that facility, to the working tools with juveniles, and to improve the training of the correctional staff. Again, a topic we heard yesterday about lack of training for experts involved in criminal justice. What about the children beyond the prison bars under the care of the probation services? As described earlier in the chart, it was a slight decline last year in the number of children under probation supervision following one of the 4 non-custodial educational measures. The maximum length of the educational measure under probation is 6 months, and the role of the families and the close relatives is crucial for the implementation of this measure. As it states also in this title, these measures have a significant educative dimension, encouraging school attendance, pro-social behaviors, reducing the contacts with the criminogenic groups. The school and the local community, as also emphasized by the previous speaker, has a very important role to play, because a child sanctioned for a crime, it is probably one of the most vulnerable members of our society. And when a child committed a crime, that means something is not working in that society and in that family. And it's our duty not only as a law enforcement representatives, but also as a community to take care of them. Moving closer to the topic of our session, children with parents in detention, I want to present briefly recent initiatives of my colleagues from prison administration to address the needs of this vulnerable group. Recently, my colleagues from prison administration and the Child Protection Authority, which belongs to a different ministry, unified their efforts, partnership again, what you expressed earlier, unified their efforts to facilitate the communication between the parents in detention and their children. A policy paper has been signed quite recently, few months ago. And this policy paper recognized that this group of children are in risk to be stigmatized, discriminated, and marginalized. This document also takes into account the child's right to preserve the personal relation and direct communication with both parents. To achieve this aim, the prison administration adopted in their facilities child-friendly visiting places and implemented several programs to encourage the relation between the children and parents while in detention. On the other hand, the Child Protection Local Unit's efforts are in order to support the children with parents in prison by counseling and other types of measures to encourage them to maintain the relations with their parents, of course, if these relations are in their interests. I was happy to observe that also the civil society was an active partner. It is also in Sweden. And these types of actions addressing very concrete needs of children with parents in detention. One of the foundations in my country, the Vasta Foundation, offered until now 293 bursaries to the children with parents in prison in order to support them in their life, to follow the school and so on. I will propose them to change the name of the project from Alone Tower School in Not Alone Tower School, because actually this is what they did. Our colleagues from civil society show a sign of coherent solidarity with this group of children, and they are not alone now. Another successful project developed with the civil society was implemented with the NGO Alternative Sociale in the eastern part of Romania, mainly for developing child-friendly visiting spaces into prisons, supporting the children with parents in prisons, and training the public institution staff in dealing with this vulnerable group of people. Police staff, prison staff, people from institutions. Again, a topic we've heard yesterday about training experts from public institutions. We are approaching now the children beyond the prison bars with parents in probation. Probably at the first look, they are not perceived as a vulnerable group because their parents receive a so-called second chance from the justice system. What I did last week, I asked my colleagues, probation counselors from 3 probation services, 1 from eastern part and 2 from the southern part of Romania, to interview in a certain day their persons under the probation supervision, parents with children younger than 18 years old. The outcome was 11 life stories about their children's experiences related to the pretrial arrest, conviction, and enforcement of the probation sanctions of their parents. From these 11 case studies, only 3 of them, the parents experienced the pretrial arrest. 1 is also mother. In 2 of these cases, children found out about the arrest of their parents from the local media. You can imagine the emotional impact of this situation and why the education of society and at large it is important. In the 3rd case, with a parent in pretrial arrest, he told his child that he is working abroad in order to avoid the emotional impact of this period. Nevertheless, due to his absence, the child was sad and less communicative with his dad when he was released. This fact can give us food for thoughts regarding consequences of the separation between parents and children. Doesn't matter what is the reason of this separation. A rupture of this relation needs time and feelings to be fixed. When the parents have been detained for pretrial arrest in these three situations, the emotional support for the children was offered by the other parent or by an older brother in one of the cases. They did not seek follow specialized support, but we can observe how another child took over the parental role to fill in the gap in the family architecture. Another example, when the child-parent role has been reversed, is in one of these 11 cases where the mother remained in liberty during her trial and her teenage daughter support her to the court hearings but never enter into the courtroom. I found out from my colleagues from probation service that the daughter comes even now at the probation meetings while her mother is having her regular sessions, but she stays outside. Probably it is a matter of emotional support, but also potential reversed parental control. She wants to be sure that her mother fulfills her obligation. Regarding conviction and implementation of the probation sanctions, from these 11 cases, not all the children are aware that criminal sanction was imposed to their parents. Nevertheless, their children appreciate a probation sentence because we can stay together, the family will be together, our family will not be affected, and one of the child recognized that a mistake had been made and this is the payment. Having a probation sanction was easier to deal with. The details of the enforcement that it was easier to deal in the community. The community wasn't aware about the conviction. In these circumstances, the relation with the children and of the children with their friends and neighbors' school were not affected. In 3 cases, the community knew about the conviction. As mentioned earlier, in 2 cases, the media was on the stories. And these 2 cases, the children suffered in the relation with their peers, especially at the school, being marginalized and reducing the contacts with other children. In the end, in the end, we asked the 11 parents how the probation sanction influenced their parental role. And of course, they told us that they are communicating more now with their children and encourage open discussion with them about daily issues and giving advice about respecting rules. In the end of my presentation, I want to draw your attention with few reflections about children within and beyond the prison bars. It's not new, it's connected with what we heard and discussed yesterday and today. We as professionals have to identify ways to explain to the decision makers and to the public that for children deprivation of liberty it is an exceptional situation, and this forum also it's an excellent opportunity. Partnership are needed for both prison and probation. Families are unique structures, but very fragile ones. We must invest our resources in keeping these structures functional, knowing that families are protective factors from the criminological point of view. And we need to analyze in depth the impact of conviction of families, and especially on children. I am sure we can identify new dimensions of this reality. In a similar way, as my experience was with this picture, when I saw it for the first time, I was thinking, how cute, we have a teddy bear. Second thought was, these are bars, this is inside or outside the prison bars. But in the end, I realized it was a hippo. So reality is always surprising according to the perspective you are looking at. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your excellent insight on and the work you do in Romania. This experience of the going towards probation as a good practice. We have 15 minutes before coffee break. So if you agree, I would immediately maybe give the floor to to the next speakers. We're going to speak about the Italian cooperation and partnership between the Ministry of Justice, the Ombudsman for Children, and the NGO Bambini Senza Barre, because I see that there are also some issues which are similar or can lead to joint questions on both presentations after the break, if you allow. So I now give the floor to Mettella Romagna Pasquini from the Department of Penitentiary Administration of the Ministry of Justice in Italy, and Lia Sacerdote from Bambini Senza Sbarre.
Thank you for your kind invitation. When we speak about children in Italian prison, it's important to refer to the law to number 62 of 21 April 2011, because said law provided for two new types of structures that are the protected family homes and the low security establishment for mothers, so-called ICAM. In said structures, mothers with their children can receive a treatment inspired to family relations and aimed at raising their awareness about their parental role, thus lessening the situations of stress and tension typically arising from the strict rules of prisons. These are very different structures. Protected family homes are structures placed outside prison, as they are intended for the reception of persons with children up to 6 years or 10 years, according to under house arrest or home detention. Local authorities are taking care of their establishment. In Rome, it was inaugurated last May the first protected family home, built on a property confiscated to the mafia, thanks to a formal agreement signed in October 2015 by the Penitentiary Administration together with Rome Municipality and Poste Insieme Onlus. ICAM are instead true and real prison structures established in the footsteps of a family home, facilities intended for the detention of imprisoned pregnant women and parents, mothers, and fathers in the event of mother's inability absence, in pre-trial custody with children up to 6 years old, and parents waiting for home detention with children up to 10 years old. Please note that the law of 21 April 2011 number 62 has benefited from a positive experience of the Penitentiary Administration, which since 2008 in the city of Milan had created, in synergy with all local authorities, a structure which allows children and mothers to spend the time of the prison sentence in an environment similar to a foster home, where there are no gates, no staff in uniform, where there is ordinary house furniture, where there is freedom to movement, and where valuable treatment and working opportunities for women are offered, and also education and entertainment activities for children are carried out. Other low security level prison for mothers over time have been opened in Turin, Venice, Senorby, and Lauro, while others are being established in Florence, Rome, and in Sicily. So far, there are 31 women in ICAM with 39 children with them. In special kindergartens, instituted by 20 prisons for adults, there are 19 women in prison with their 20 children. In those prisons, the administration tries to ensure all the protection and guarantees. In the juvenile detention facilities, there are no kindergartens. The juvenile detention facilities are present in number 17 all over the country, housing 53 youthful inmates, whose 37 are young women. There are no kindergartens because the 3 structures found to be able to accommodate mothers detained with newborn infants of very limited number are residences constituted by single rooms equipped with all the necessary facilities to meet the needs of young mothers and their newborns. It shall not be neglected the significant contribution given by the territorial networks of volunteer associations by promoting various and diversified initiatives, including accompanying children with their imprisoned mothers outside prior consent of the mother, in order to enable them to attend the nursery schools of the neighborhood, as well as to carry out recreational and educational activities appropriate to their age. But the action of Department Penitentiary Administration and Department of Juvenile and Community Justice aim to protect the emotional relation of imprisoned parents went even beyond. Indeed, both departments focus on children who, although they live in freedom, must deal with the problem of their parents' imprisonment and must enter prisons to visit them. As a consequence, action aimed at supporting parenting were promoted by the departments, focusing on helping prisoners to be involved in family decision-making regarding their children's life, and focusing on establishing rehabilitation programs for young fathers and mothers housed in detention centers. In a month, about 37,000 children go to prison to visit their parents. In the same period, about 60 children, mostly under 5 years, of 55 imprisoned parents, are admitted to domestic juvenile prisons. It is worth stressing how this type of action, which has proved to be successful so far, has a preventive function too, also for the entire community. Actually, inmates who during their detention have positive experience with their children run less risk after the release, commit new crimes. Among the various initiatives taken in that matter, a crucial role is played by the Memorandum of Understanding among the Minister for Justice, the National Ombudsperson for Childhood and Adolescence, and the NGO Bambini Senza Sbarre Onlus, undersigned on 21 March 2014 and confirmed on 6 September 2016. Such charter provides for a range of arrangements to soften the children's impact with an unknown and scaring world, as well as to lessen their emotional tension, which could otherwise bring negative consequences on the parent-child relation. Thanks to the Charter, Department Penitentiary Administration and Department of Juvenile and Community Justice have been implemented various initiatives in a lot of prisons, were provided playground where visits can be held, waiting rooms and visit facilities where are space dedicated to children, also called yellow space, especially equipped and child-friendly areas with paintings, toys, outdoor space called green areas where prisoners and their children can even have a meal together. Opportunity to visit inmates also in the afternoon and in holidays in order not to interfere with school attendance. Procedures for booking visits by telephone. But I give the floor to Madam Lia Sacerdote, who better will explain the charter.
Okay, can we change the, please? Forse vengo lì. Sì. Okay, good morning. I want to thank the European Commission for this invitation. I am very honored for this. And I am very glad to do this presentation with Metella Pasquini. We have been working together very good to write and implement the Memorandum of Understanding. It's called also Charter of Children of Imprisoned Parents. But before speaking about memorandum, I invite you to get into an Italian high security prison together with children going to meet their imprisoned parents. So, if possible to... Let's see the video before. Thank you.
Took me down to a lovely place. You said this is where I go. My heart's not quite in this race. I want it all to be slow. Oh, don't you feel the time has come for you to see the light? Oh, don't you feel the time has come for you to see the light?
Thank you. Now I try to answer why a memorandum of understanding. And I ran through just a few points of this presentation that I want to highlight. The first, that is very important, that one of the three signatures is of the National Ombudswoman of Childhood and not of the Ombudsperson of Prisoners, because the focus for us is a child. Also, we know that if the rights of children are respected, also the rights of prisoned parents are respected. The second point is about the maintaining of the bond. Bond child-parent means also to have a physical contact, and this means psychic separation through which the child becomes autonomous from the parent. And here I would like to highlight 2 points. The first is that memorandum is a charter that transforms the needs of these children in their rights, human rights. The second is that charter could usefully be replicated in Europe, and we think that this point could become a main issue for Europe. And to confirm the importance of this issue, I read the answer given to a parliamentary question by Mrs. Jourova on behalf of the Commission. The Commission welcomes the Italian Memorandum of Understanding and disseminated information on it to stakeholders for the right of the child, July 2016. Now, I want to underline that the Charter commits the penitentiary system to be aware of the presence of the child and of a social burden that a parent's detention implies. And this experience can be an important, for the child, an important acknowledgement of legality. Here, the main focus is that the Charter is an important message for civil society. It is a request for a change of attitude. It is a cultural shift that must put, first of all, everybody, for all everybody, on the side of children, and not simply on the side of imprisoned parents and their legal obligations. Now, I try quickly summarize the articles of the Charter. 1. It deals with the alternative measures of the imprisoned parents. 2. It establishes the importance of welcoming spaces. 3. It sets other ways to maintain the bond children-parents. 4. It implements the training of penitentiary administration staff and juvenile justice operators at local and national level. Five deals with information, and information means the truth to be told to the children, and it is, we know, is a crucial task to be done, and it means for us to prepare the family and the imprisoned parents to be able to tell the truth. Article 6 is about collecting data. Article 7, this article deals with children who stay in prison with imprisoned mothers. And now in Italy, we are waiting for a law that will rule that no child should live in prison, but outside and under alternative measures, but with their mothers. Now, here, I want to underline that for children is absolutely important to have their parents attending during special occasions of their life. First school day, birthdays, religious anniversaries. In fact, in these occasions, the absence, I would say the lack of the father, actually exposes the child to stigma. Now, this permission is given only for the death of a parent. Now, there is this slide is about the background for charter, international laws, Italian laws, researches, and survey. And then we have a slide about bambini senza sbarre and photo galleries of us. And now, memorandum, we can, you can find the full text of the charter in the website of Bambini Senza Sbarre and of COPE, Children of Prisoners, the network of Children of Prisoners' Parents. You find it in several languages. And I thank you for your attention.
The time is perfect, and we really need to break for coffee. But please don't forget your questions. I know you probably have many for the three speakers, and we will reconvene here. What time, Tommaso? 15 minutes. Yeah. 15 minutes. Welcome back to our session. Before I give the floor for questions to our speakers who are joining us, I'll just take the occasion to give the floor to a researcher, Eileen Lowerais, who is carrying out a PhD research that she wants to brief you about.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me doing my research here as well, and using you all as respondents, hopefully, for a questionnaire. So I'm working at the University of Ghent here in Belgium, and I want to research if the best interest of the child should be taken into consideration by criminal law decision makers, like judges, prosecutors, and everyone who is involved in decisions regarding parents. And how this should be shaped, because there's various ways to take the children into account, for example, at the sentencing stage. And I have some literature I found on various countries, mainly common law countries, but the vast majority of European countries I have no information about what their practices are at the moment, whether there's information available to judges about the family situation of the defendant. So I made up a short questionnaire with some legal questions mainly, so I'm not sure if everyone is very well informed about the legal system within their country. And I would like to ask you to fill out these questions. You mainly have to tick some boxes, and if you can, provide some extra information. And it would be very helpful to me to see what the practices are in Europe at the moment, and if there's some more action needed. There's the Council of Europe recommendation coming up, but there might be more action needed than just this recommendation. So I'll hand them out now, and if you would be so kind to fill them out to your best knowledge, I would be very happy. So that was everything. If you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them later.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe, people can find it at the beginning of the room. Yeah, at the entrance there. Thank you. I have one intervention there.
Good morning. I'm a representative of the Italian Independent Authority for Children and Adolescents, the Ombudsperson for Children in Italy, who is one of the 3 signatories of the Memorandum of Understanding. And the Ombudsperson for Children pays particular attention to what can be considered the most vulnerable among vulnerables, that is unaccompanied minors and children of imprisoned parents and children in institutions. So we would like to thank the European Commission both for the kind invitation to participate and for the thematic which have been discussed yesterday and today. As for the Memorandum of Understanding, it is important also to stress that the partnership among the stakeholders, among the actors involved is very important, because putting together with different competencies the Ministry of Justice and the non-governmental organization and the National Authority for Children and Adolescents is important. We have convened 4th meetings of the monitoring table up to now, where shared strategies can be studied, analyzed, and in order to make proposals all together for the promotion and the protection of the rights of children of imprisoned parents, where it is their best interest to meet their parents, of course. And on the other hand, as we think that it can be a good practice, the Memorandum of Understanding has been translated into English and sent to the European Network of Ombudspersons for Children in order to share our experience. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for the last information. Do you have questions, please?
Rachel Brett, individual member of COPE. I actually asked this question partly in the interval, but I think it's worth bringing out because one of the things from the Italian situation is that these protected family homes are a way for foreign national mothers to get a home detention rather than being sent to prison. And I think that's an important and good practice to think about. Now, there may be challenges about getting the judges to actually apply it, but I think because we haven't actually talked much, if at all, about foreign national prisoners, and at least in that instance, I think there is a bigger gap that we haven't talked about, and I'm not suggesting we necessarily try and address it now, but I think we ought to flag it, which is more generally about the children of foreign national prisoners who may be in their home country, and how on earth and whose responsibility it is to help them to maintain contact with their imprisoned parent. Secondly, I really wanted to commend the example from Romania of about your survey about the children of those on probation, because it seems to me that is something that could respond to Renata Winter's added value question. That if we could actually get more of that kind of information that shows the benefits of probation for the parent rather than imprisonment. And finally, I wanted to endorse what Madeleine said about the family members, not just parents, very much as a practical issue. I do have a concern, which is a strategic, not a principled concern, which is that we're having enough difficulty with the idea of the child, the best interests of the child being taken into account when sentencing or considering pretrial measures for a parent or carer. I think trying to expand that to a family member would not be a good move at this point. I think we need to try and really endorse and get buy-in on the parent or carer angle of that. But that doesn't alter the reality of the provision and the support and the help for those others, with the family members. Thanks.
Thanks to you for underlining this aspect. And I have a reaction probably. No? Yeah.
Hi, Camilla Orellana from NGO BUF in Sweden. I would like to address your question about how we can work with the children that live in another country than in the one where the parent is imprisoned. We at BUF, we have had those cases, and what we do, we contact other NGOs that are in that country that the children live, so that we like give the support about how the prison, the PTS function in Sweden, and then give also the contact to the other country, the other NGO, so that they can give the support to the children, and then also so that we can do visits and collaborate in between NGOs, so that the children can visit their parents.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other reaction on yes, please.
Hi, Liz Eyre from COPE, Children of Prisoners Europe. I just wanted to thank you for all of these incredible initiatives that are really taking things forward. I had a specific question for Ileanu Carpenanu of Romania, just with respect to the number of children that was indicated by the National Institute of Statistics, I believe, 3,900 something, that, yeah? 3 million.
3,900,000, so less than 4 million at the beginning of last year.
Yeah, is that better? I was looking at the website of Alternative Social. You work with them, I think, relatively closely. And they actually, for the first time, I saw a figure that they had posted on the number of children with a parent in prison who were actually being supported by social services, which was a really important figure to read, even though it represented about 5% of the figure that they were posting. And I was wondering if you had any further information in terms of follow-up, and if indeed there is a kind of exploration of what happens to the children in terms of support.
As I explained also in my presentation, there are some steps in this area. A few years ago we had nothing, and now we have something which is moving. And this is the partnership, first of all, between the national authorities, and secondly, the partnership with the NGOs. Alternative Sociale is one of them. It is important, I think, first thing we have to have in mind is that the number of parents in prison is going down, which is the first good thing we should underline. So we have less children affected. Probably Alternative Sociale are somehow following this phenomenon closely than Institute of Statistics. But I think probably it would be a good idea to include in our national statistic an item related to this issue, and this will be again an added value. So this is, let's say, my answer and my comment. Yeah.
Yesterday, I found out through some discussions that in the Czech Republic, through one survey by Lumos, they found that children in institutions, of children surveyed, 6.7% of children had a parent in prison. And this is something that we'd like to look a bit more closely at in terms of going beyond children who are in contact with NGOs and with the parents, and kind of to look beyond to reach children who are not in contact with the parents. And I was wondering if you had any information on that in Romania efforts. Okay.
My name is Attila Juhász, and it's an honor, a privilege to be here. But before I start my presentation, I would like to express my. I was looking at the row, and I think I am the odd one out. You can guess why. Probably I'm the only man. So I would like to express my full respect towards Linnea and Dylan. I think it's been a very brave move from you, and I think it can really make a difference. And I would, as someone working for the prison, I would make it compulsory for each prison officers to attend the presentation that you or one of your peers would have. I think it's. I had one experience. I was lucky enough to find a brave girl in Hungary, and she had a speech, 10 minutes, a very short speech, but she introduced her position to my staff members. And it was a shocking experience, I think, for many of my colleagues. Very tough, big security officers who started to cry towards the end of the presentation, because it was they have never thought of these things. So I really think that what you do is excellent, and you can really make a difference. So really big respect for your work, and keep up like this. All the best for this exercise.
Thank you for this, and this allows me to introduce you correctly. So we have the pleasure to now hear from, before we continue our discussion, from Attila Juhász, sorry for the pronunciation, who has been prison governor now for 10 years in the Hevs County Penitentiary Institute in Hungary. He will talk to us about his experience, and he'll also talk to us about the draft recommendation in the Council of Europe. He's just back from Strasbourg.
Thank you once again for having me here. Yeah, I have a double function, and I tried squeeze everything within this 50 minutes frame. I was a prison governor for 10 years, and I also member of the PCCP, and I just came from Strasbourg. Literally, I left at 3 in the morning, so I can inform you about the of the plenary meeting and the feedback that the new recommendation concerning children with imprisoned parents received. So I think I can give you some reference on that work. I could start with a personal view of why we started to work with the children of incarcerated parents, but I think I shouldn't take too much of your precious time, so I jump right into the topic. As prison governors in Hungary, we experienced that that the number of the children of incarcerated parents is very high, and we didn't know, and it was said before, it's very difficult to find the data on children. So we did our own survey in my prison, and we got to the shocking conclusion that at least 2 or even 3 children belong to each incarcerated parents. Of course, it wasn't a representative survey, it wasn't in each prison institutes, but in my prison it was. The figure was almost 3 children per inmates, which if you can multiply the figures, and we have 18,000 inmates in Hungary, that means that 40,000 children are directly affected with the parents' incarceration, and we haven't touched the topic of siblings and brothers, sisters, grandparents or friends. So I think just this is a huge number. Putting together the 18,000 inmates and 40,000 children in Hungary, it's a medium-sized city, or even bigger, probably. So we experienced problems on a personal, family, community, and society level. So that's why we decided to do our survey, and it had some very interesting results. I just picked a couple of slides from the survey, but you can find at the end of the presentation. You can use it for your own purposes. How often do the children meet with the parents? You see that, and it's in our case it's mothers. About half of them meet once a month, and about the other half meets less frequently than once a month. 30% meet with the child or children every 3 months, and there are people who meet even less. So I think this is very telling, and we have to take this figure into consideration. Also, how much information does the mother know about the child, and what does the mother know about the child's school results during incarceration? Almost 40% said everything. I don't believe that, but the others didn't dare to say that they know a lot about their children's school results. Why I don't believe it's 40%, because the next question was, where does the child actually study? And only 6% could give the exact name and the address of the school where the child studies. So I think the figures are very optimistic, and the actual figures are much less than that. What do the mothers know about their child's problems? It's again 30% said that they know everything, which I also doubt, but 70% doesn't know much about the child's problems during incarceration. What do they know about the peers? What do they know about the child's friends? It's again 32% said that they know everything, and almost 70% said nothing or less or little information. I think it's it's very important that the parents are completely left out from the family during the incarceration, and it can have a serious effect on the children later on. So we decided that that we want to do something as a prison. But what can a prison do, and who should be doing it? And I think there is a social role of the prison that should be fulfilled, and that's how we come across with Storybook Dads and Storybook Moms program. You might all be aware of the program. I think that's a beautiful initiative. And also we try to look for recommendations how to make our prison, how to make the everyday life of the prison child-friendly or child-sensitive. There isn't much information in the Council of Europe recommendation, or I can say now there wasn't much. The European Code of Ethics has a sentence. The European probation rules and the European prison rules have a sentence or two on recommendations related to children. So there wasn't much reference. That's when Storybook Moms came, and we were delighted that we could start this program in Eger in 2010, 7 years ago. And at first we had some very basic aims. We were preparing CDs for Christmas. It was very simple, just strengthen family bonds, social relationships, improving reading skills and self-expression. That's how we started. It proved to be, in the first year, it proved to be a great success. Mothers loved it, so as their families. I got some real touching feedback from children who just kept listening to the CDs that were received from the mothers. So it was working very, very well. And the inmates came up with their own initiative the following year, that they have this knowledge, because we have a volunteer who comes to the prison every week, and she teaches the inmates how to tell stories and what's the meaning behind these stories. And I think that's another presentation, or that could be another presentation. But the inmates realized that they know something, and they wanted to include an explorative element. So ever since 2011, all the participating inmates who are participating this group, they are visiting disabled children in the home of disabled children every month, and they are playing with disabled children, telling them stories. I think it gives her. Sorry, I'm in a hurry. I want to include everything in this 15 minutes. So it's very important. It gives them responsibility and helps a lot for the children. Inmates are queuing up for participating, and it's something with a very strong restorative element. 2012 was a great step in our prison, because we met an NGO, and I think, and it was said before, that working together with NGOs, it's very, very important, and I think that together we can achieve much, much more, and I think it adds a lot for the reintegration role of the prison. We got a very generous offer in 2012 that we could send 5 mothers who were still serving their sentences and 13 of their children to a 10 days summer camp, which was financed by an NGO. And I think that these 10 days were an experience of a lifetime for all the participants. It was very, very well received, and apart from these 5 families, I think it was very important that we could raise public awareness to the problem, and more newspaper articles were presented on this issue. It was also very clear that the mothers were expecting to meet again with their children, and the children were expecting that everything will be beautiful after the release, and it's not the case. Both parties have their expectations, and after they meet, it can end up with tragedy, because these expectations doesn't necessarily mean. So we learned that we have to prepare the inmates for release, and we also have to prepare the families. So we got another NGO in 2013, and with 5 families and 13 children, we started to work on a program that our therapist was working with the inmates inside the prison, while outside this NGO was working with the families. For the social inclusion, we were organizing family days, we were organizing regular programs, and it started to have very, very strong results. Children were having their voice heard. Families could have feedback from the inmates and vice versa. Prison staff could understand situations much better because we know what was going on in the family. So I think it started to work very well. And with the help of some funding, between 2014 and 2016, we could extend this program. So we were working inside with the inmates and outside with their families. 15 families were included. That meant over 70 children. The NGO could provide scholarship programs for the children. Also, sometimes at winter time, they just probably bought a pair of shoes for the children. And it meant a lot of support for the inmates, for the mothers, that they knew that someone is taking care of their children. That meant a lot for them during their incarceration. We were financing family visits because many of the families cannot afford a regular visit due to the distance between the prison and their home location. We could also have the chance to prepare the community because our NGO wasn't just dealing with the families, but they were also dealing with the local community and helped a lot to embed the release of the mother in the community. They could also prepare with specialized programs according to the family's needs. And another key point again, we could raise public awareness. And I think this is a key issue that we have to get people understand what is going on with these families, what is going on with these children. And I was, once again, I have to say, I was very glad that I could hear these very brave youngsters coming out with their stories, because it's very important. People don't know anything about the situation of the children of incarcerated parents, and it is very, very important that that they should have information, reliable information. What was the benefits that we experienced over the 7 years? We realized that if we provide the right environment, the family relations improve and they can be much better. We could provide a safer environment when we could prepare the family for the reinsertion of the mother, because I think prison in this sense has a double function. We have to prepare society. We have to prepare the inmates for reintegration, but we also have to prepare society. And with the help of our NGO colleagues, we could do that very effectively. And they could build up a much more supportive community. Over the 7 years, there were over 100 participants in this group. So far, we only had 2 out of these 100. I wouldn't say that we can stop recidivism with this program, but I think if we take more care, if we include the different programs, if we include programs that help rebuilding family relations, that can have a great effect on recidivism. And you can see and you can feel the atmosphere is much more relaxed in the prison. And there is statistically there is no disciplinary case amongst the participants because they know that someone is taking extra care of their children. They receive regular information, they have feedback, and also they can express their problems and they can discuss their problems with the family throughout the NGO. So I think it's it's very, very important that and it can be proven that if we take care of these issues, that reduces stress level in the prison, thus functioning as a tool for dynamic security. Raising public awareness, I cannot mention it enough times, and also I think we can contribute to happier families and throughout happier families to happier community. This picture was made with our participating mother in the summer camp. There is one very important issue when it comes to prison, and most of you might not work for the prison, but I would still stress it whenever I can, that the lady by a prison professional would be called an inmate. But all prison officers should be remembered from time to time that she is also called mommy. And I think this is very, very important for prison officers to realize that they are dealing with parents with problems. So I think any program that can focus on this has to be very successful. As I said, I have a sort of double function here now because there were in the past couple of years, I can say decade, there were a lot of initiatives in many European countries, and thanks to these initiatives and thanks to your work all over Europe, there was a very strong signal sent to the Council of Europe that there is a need for a recommendation, because it's as it was said before by Nancy, the number of children can be as much as 2.1 million all over the 47 member states of the Council of Europe. So it's a huge number, and if we don't take care of these children, they might end up in prison, because there are some statistics that they are much more likely to end up if we don't take proper care of them. So there was an initiative to have a recommendation concerning children with imprisoned parents, and the main points of the recommendation is the rights and the best interest of the child should be of primary consideration, the enjoyment of rights and principles, the continuous relationship with imprisoned parents, to fight against stigma and discrimination, because it's very often experienced, I think, and also raising public awareness is another key issue. We put together, with the help of COPE and other participants, we put together a recommendation. We worked quite a lot with it in the past 1 year or so. And I can report to you that yesterday it was the plenary meeting of the PCCP, and it was received very well by the whole plenary. There were a couple of amendments and modifications, but I think it was one of the smoothest I have experienced so far. So we are waiting. The material is basically ready. We are sending it to the CDPC. And then hopefully in the beginning of next year to the Committee of Ministers. And I hope that soon we will have a full recommendation concerning children with imprisoned parents for the 47 member states of the Council of Europe. I think that's a great achievement. And I think that each of us who was participated in any way could be very, very proud of ourselves, because I think this recommendation can really make a difference. And I hope that you can use this material in your work as a reference towards your governments. You can push through your opinion, your ideas much easily because you can refer to a Council of Europe recommendation. And I hope that with the help of this material, we can really change Europe for the better. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
thanks to you for this double presentation. If you have any questions, either on the Hungarian experience or on the last sessions on the recommendation.
I think there are a lot of things we can follow up on here, but one of the things I wanted to ask, particularly about the Romanian and the Italian presentations, is, and you alluded to it as well, Attila, and how we get the public on board and how we get judges on board. And it's very clear from the Romanian experience that you've been able to shift the type of sentencing from prison to probation, which is very positive, but I'm interested in how you did that. But also in the Italian memorandum, the Article 1 asks for judges to give those alternative measures. We've really struggled with this in Scotland because they would want the judges to be independent. And we've had very positive conversations with the Sentencing Council, but they didn't want the fact of a child being affected to be part of the sentencing decision. They said that the children's needs should be considered, but considered separately. So it's a really interesting question as to how we get that shift. So it's mainly to Romania and Italy, but also to the broader group.
The official answer is it was easy. We changed the law. The unofficial answer is it was a lot of effort and years of action. Actually, we dedicated 15 years from our lives to achieve this. So we invested a lot of money, including EU money. So I think this is an opportunity. We have to use this opportunity, and this is a kind of advice I will offer to other member states, and not only, to use this kind of opportunity. And also partnership with the civil society, because probation started in Romania as an initiative of the NGOs. And this is, again, an initiative of the civil society, which now produces results in the justice area. So these are our practices and our experiences.
Yes, this is the alternative measure is very important, the best practice, and but there is a great work to do to sensitize the judges, and so now we have this work to do in Italy. We are working with the Minister of Justice and ombudsperson every 3 months. We are meeting, and we are monitoring everything in Italy, and in particular we have founded a table in Lombardy, in a local region, because the monitoring of a little region is easier, and it can be useful for the national table. And the first thing we have to do is to organize a meeting for the judges to sensitize to the memorandum, but it will be very difficult, I think, not so easy.
Thank you.
I was also stricken by the call for raising awareness even more broadly. I mean, it's how do we, but maybe it's also another question, what is your experience in terms of what works in combating this stigmatization and, perceptions in in societies. And of course, this is not only the social role of prisons. I think you have done incredible work, but it involves all other parts of societies to join in, partnership with schools. And what I hear more and more from you is sometimes the problem is that everyone is responsible for a part of the story. And then what happens in between? So maybe that's also something to reflect further. Yeah, please.
We organized many conferences on this on our programs, and we always invited judges, prosecutors, whoever we could. I'm thankful for our volunteers, children who came and explained their stories, and that really of course with lot of attention we invited journalists, and I think these are the stories. If you start sharing these stories, sharing the stories that these children went through, I think the people never ever thought about it. Whenever it comes to prison, there are all these criminals and all these negative stereotypes, but once you start thinking about it, you see the other aspects. I think I'm very grateful for the media, because they were very supportive over the years, and we appeared in many different places. So I would just push it as far as possible.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. For this,
then we go to the next one.
Okay. Okay. I asked to Eduardo to speak about the campaign, about the memorandum and so on, and the theme of the sensitization to social.
Very shortly, we start the first charter, MOU or charter, was signed on the 21st March 21st, 2014. And that time we started, not nationally, but internationally, European spectre with COPE, Children of Prisoner Europe, which just made a headline, the Europeization of the Charter. And just with their huge effort, I guess we had 3 international conferences since 2014, 2015, 16, yes, and also this time. So four times we met all together, all the network, just explaining the points that Leah told you before, and always the same. The script was always the same. First article, second article, third article, because you got to memorize it, and hopefully, with the laws of your country, try to match those points, And was very important, who said, of course, we pushed a lot with the national campaign. Yes, of course. The national campaign is very important because in a certain way, at a certain moment, the institution see you in the radar. They start to see you on television, on radio, on a newspaper, and they start to say, oh, this is important, this is very important. When you give the numbers, 100,000 on daily basis in Italy, 2.1 or 2.3 in Europe, these are a huge number. You say 2.1. We don't use 2.1, but if we use 2.1, we arrive to 200,010 in Italy. So it's really something. The numbers, journalists love the numbers. When you give them datas, pipes that you show, stacks that you show, they love them, and they write her. They invite you in the television.
Thanks. We're organizing a workshop on communicating human rights. You made me think of it because we are having an endless discussion. How do we how do we make sure that human rights get into the headlines? But and some of what you say, personal testimony is very important. Data, evidence, but...
Yeah, you're right. We went on the prime time with the testimonies. They ask for that because, of course, it's the most, powerful way to communicate this kind of very difficult issues.
Thank you. I need to move on, unfortunately, but we still have two very interesting presentations we want to hear. I would now give the floor to Bernardica Franic-Nad, Head of Service of General Treatment Programs for Prisoners and Juveniles, Ministry of Justice of Croatia, who is a psychologist and works at the Croatian Ministry of Justice. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you and to share our experiences. So I would like to say something about our efforts to support the children who have parents in prison. So just a few basic facts. Croatia has about 4,200,000 inhabitants, and 3,200 of prisoners, inmates. 96% are male and 4% are female. About 1/3 of the prison population are the parents of children under 18. And we have, at the moment, we don't have any children in maternity ward in the penitentiary in Požega. So in Croatia, the child who is born during the enforcement of sentence could stay, if on mother's request, up to years of 3. So. About 12,000 children are on the yearly basis under impact of their incarceration of their parents. That's when we count all legal categories of inmates. So. If we look at the Bill of Rights of children of incarcerated parents, we can deal with those 3. So what we are doing. A child have the right to speak with, see and touch his parent. So we are providing child-friendly visiting rooms, which are child centers and conducive to bonding, and which are not intimidating. We taking into account proximity to family when we assigning our prisoners, and we encourage child welfare departments and especially NGOs to facilitate the contact on many different ways. The child has a right not to be judged, blamed or labeled because his or her parents are incarcerated. Rhoda created this small notebook. It has a label on it, and it says labels are for notebooks, not for people. So we are train our staff to recognize needs and concerns of children with parents in prison, and we create opportunities for children of incarcerated parents to communicate and support each other. And children have rights to lifelong relationship with their parents. So basis of Croatian way of enforcement the sentence is the rehabilitation concept. And we teach inmates how to improve and maintain quality contact with their children. And we also are preparing inmates for successful return to family after release. It is we focused on the to build stronger family relationships, and this is of a huge importance for welfare of children and parents and society. So that is age structure of underage children with incarcerated mothers. So they are mostly between 7 and 15 years. And according our law of enforcement sentence, child's right is to visit incarcerated parent every week and holidays for at least 1 hour. But over half of the mothers do not receive visits from their children while they are in prison. 31% of mothers do not want their children to visit them. They thought that children conditions are too stressful for the children, but also the situation of rastanak. Separation is too hard for the mothers too. And in 13% of cases, children don't even know that their mothers are serving a prison sentence, and those 25% that is positive, because those mothers are using benefits, so they can live at home and be in contact with their children at their homes. Main reason why is so is that there is not much opportunity for children to visit their mothers, is lack of funding, but also distance between the place there where the children lives, because we have only one penitentiary in Croatia for female inmates. So this here red line is trend of it's decreasing a number of visits of all categories, and the yellow one that are the children visits. So you can see that on 2014 and 2015 it's above the average, because at that time we had intervention of one NGO which financed the children's visits. So during the 2016 that NGO didn't had such a project, so you can see what is the consequence. When we ask inmates, so here are female and male inmates, what is the hardest for them in a prison, they told us that being separated from the children and being separated from family is something that is hardest for them. And so what is most helpful? Children's visit. Everything helps when someone is in prison, but children's visits and visits of family and phone conversation with children mostly. So over past about 5 years, we redirect our focus on the children, and we are trying to increase awareness about children's needs among our staff. We are trying to improve conditions, and NGOs helps us very much with improving space conditions for children visits, but also with plenty of programs in the prison system. So we have in every prison and penitentiary appropriate space for a children's visit, and we trying to make organizationally special time for children's visit, and to adjust that time with other obligations of children and parent or caregiver who is coming with child. Our treatment staff implement the program Prisoner as a Parent, and we trained our staff also continuously in many different programs for inmates who are parents. Also, we include judicial police officers or security staff, and during the basic course we introduce them with child's needs, and teach them to use child-friendly approach to children when during admission to visits. And also some of the security staff is included in implementation of program Prisoner as a Parent in a pair with treatment officer. So this is an example of waiting room. It's recently renovated, and you can recognize those drawing. It's NGO Roda who donated this. So that are some spaces from our prison and penitentiaries. This is that are examples of outdoor spaces. This is a brand new kitchen in maternity ward in Požega Penitentiary. This is also maternity ward. This is a tour through the Glina Penitentiary. Those pictures and text are showing to children. This is a waiting area for visitors, and children can see and read, and or other parent could read them what is their dad doing during the day, so where he sleeps, where he works, learn how he spends his leisure time, and so on. So if children don't know what is going on with their parent, they are likely to imagine horrible things. So if they have information, they can be peaceful and not to worry too much for their deaths. So also with help of NGOs, we organizing plenty of activities during the holidays, Family Day, Father Day, Mother Day, everything, and especially during the European Prisoners' Children campaign in June. So plenty of activities, puppet shows, everything. So one of activity that is that children likes very much is taking a family photo with their parent. So we have a treatment program Prisoner as a parent. And regarding cooperation with children's ombudsman, we are following her recommendations. Also, we got lots of publication on rights of children with incarcerated parents, together mostly with NGO RODA. We organize symposiums, roundtables, conferences. Tomorrow, Deputy of Child's Ombudsman and I will have a lecture on conference of Croatian psychologists. We are trying to prepare memorandum of understanding, so we look at your experience, and we will do it very soon, I hope, with between Children's Ombudsman, Prison System Directorate, and NGO Parents in Action RODA. So we planned also joint activities in the action plan for national strategy. Child Ombudsman always remember us that to protect the children's rights, we should take a multi-agency approach, so everyone is invited and in charge. Police, prison system, social welfare, health, NGOs, everyone has his task, and we can do it without each other. So we, this June, during the European campaign, we organize a round table at Croatian Parliament to try to develop a network of support for children whose parents are in prison. Also, Croatia is a member of Europris and a member of Family Relation Expert Group. First meeting was in Zagreb last year, second one in Helsinki this year, and we contribute to a report which is a collection of good practices to protect rights of children who are with incarcerated parents. Also, we cooperate with NGO, civil society organization, and the Ministry of Welfare and Ministry of Justice founding calls with where the priority are children of inmates. So at the moment we have 10 NGOs included in programs which are supporting parents during incarceration and after. For example, there is a program called Psychosocial Support for Prisoners who are parents, their partners and children. So they are including all the whole family. There is origami workshops, one NGO, then developing and strengthening parenting skills of former inmates, choose your parenting battles, restart, parents included. Oh, so plenty of programs which are aimed to improve parenting skills of inmates. And NGO RODA, there are 5 programs. Actually, MAME finished last year, MAME Mothers. Okay. So we have a reading program. Since Attila told almost everything, it is similar. It is implemented in whole prison system. Okay, Project MAME, it's about raising parental competence. This is a reading program. Inmate parent is recorded the story and send the book with the story with a personal note and instruction for caregiver to the child, so the child can be with his or her parent whenever he likes to. This is the program.
So we just need to go.
Okay, so it is. There are many products developed by prisoners and the designers with special messages to connect children with their incarcerated parents. And for profit of those of selling of those products will be used to financing of children's visits. So that are some of the products. They will be made by inmates.
I really need to conclude there because otherwise we don't have time for questions and for the last speaker.
We should always keep in mind that children should be taught that prison-imposed restrictions do not apply to love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to be a bit brutal. I would take the last intervention and the question at the end. So we have Lucia Bozikov, Head of Treatment Division, the Ministry of Justice, Prison Administration in Slovenia, who is also a member of Europe.
Good afternoon to everybody also from my side. First of all, I would like to say that it's an honor for me to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I personally think that such events are important for the whole society and, of course, for each country. I'm coming from Slovenia, as mentioned, and a few years ago, Miss Liz Ayer from COPE visited us, our prison system, and she reported on examples of good practice in the field of children who have parents in prison. And I have to stress for that after her visit, we started with more intensive work in this field. So thanks, Liz, you were our inspiration, our startup. And beside that, as Bea mentioned, I would also like to say that for us it's very important European organization who established this special expert group with name Family Relations, and it is also helpful and beneficial for our prison system. During that meetings, we can comparing our practice and work, and COPE is also involved in this group, Miss Lucy Campbell and Madeline, so we can get a lot of ideas and knowledge from such an experts. So my contribution is named "The Child and His or Her Best Interests Are at the Heart of Action." So this is our goal that we have put into our new strategy of the prison administration from 2017 to 2012. And during the implementation of this goal, we are asking ourselves how we hear child's voice. So the Finnish child ombudsman yesterday was talking about are we really hear child's voice? As you know, Slovenia is a small country, and we have right now 1,300 prisoners, and our national statistics tell us that we have 1,765 children separated from imprisoned fathers and 65 children separated from imprisoned mothers. So fortunately, number of prisoners falling down also in Slovenia. And I do not want to present our system as one without problems, or I just want to share our experience and challenges we are facing right now. So statistics shows us also that 70% of female prisoners reported having children. Almost all of them reported receiving visits from their children, and 80% of female prisoners said that they were involved with caring for their children before they came into prison. I will skip the next few slides about data of prison population, and I would like to mention that we got money from our government for building a new prison for a man in Ljubljana. This is capital city of Slovenia, and money for reconstruction of our women prison. Especially attention in these construction plans we put on facilities for visiting. When I was talking about the strategy, so our focus is to maintaining and promoting positive social network, and also that prisoners are motivated to maintain contacts with the outside world and with their social network. I will continue to present some characteristics of our prison system in the field of work with children and families. According to Slovenia law, imprisoned persons have a right on visits of immediate family and other social contacts twice a week, the possibility of telephone contact also twice a week, but prisons could provide telephone contacts every day. So much attention is shown to contact for imprisoned persons with their children. And below I will present some of the key findings in our practice. So our practice shows us that these contacts are extremely important to imprisoned persons and for children, in the sense that they as less as possible feel absence of their parents. We have possibility to use separate rooms for inmates and unsupervised meetings with family members, partners, and children. This is in our largest Slovenian prison, Dob. We are talking about family visits in these rooms where family members can spend more quality time with the prisoner. These visits are particularly for the long-term prisoners. And the prison has 5 such rooms within. The very important is the role in maintaining contact with family and wider social environment, and also in the process of successful integration into regular life after serving the sentence. And we are doing a lot in collaboration with our centers for social work, working with prison families, especially the child must be here fully supported. We also realize that it's crucial for a child to know whereabouts of his or her parent, no matter the circumstances, even in case of separation, even if he or she is in high security facilities. We need to enable as much contact between child and parent as possible. we actually started a program called the Rainbow Day in our women prison, and the aim of the program is to enable women prisoners to spend quality time with their children. So the prison staff prepare different workshops in order to strengthen the connection between the mother and the child, and the prison staff guide prisoners through activities like painting, coloring, singing, reading. Very important finding, which is also part of our work, is that environment alone is not as traumatic as the fact that the child is not in contact with parents. And we really, in all our training for the prison staff, we are talking about that the child has to know that okay, my father, my mother is in prison, but I know I can be in constant contact with him or her, and I can really open him or her. So another important thing through practice, that we try to see each child within the prison system as an individual. We talk about these things a lot. We heard about these days a lot of this. And that we show a sensitivity for the child's level of development and address a different age of stages as well. So what we have done also, we need to get knowledge about the needs of the child, and we organize round table with all heads of security units in prison system, and we discuss the things like why it is harmful to check the child when entering the prison, what is the best for a child when they visits his parents in prison, what is the role of prison officers during the visits. So we organize, as I mentioned, special staff training for all prison staffs who comes into contact with families, and very simple questions, but very difficult to understand from the side of the prison officers responsible for security. We are talking about a way of thinking. So so at the end, I would like to mention that also very, very important message that we are talking within the system is that when a child is in crisis, there is crisis for a parent and vice versa. So this is the very important thing, and how to make the best circle of support for the prisoners and for the family members. What steps can be taken in this field? I think that the most important thing is that we set the path. We also see the goal at the end as this is happy children. So thank you for your attention.
And thank you for sharing your practice and to be right on time. So it gives us a good, I would say 15 minutes at least to exchange. First of all, if you have questions on the last two presentations in particular, the Croatian experience and Slovenian experience, I would take them first. Yes?
I would just have a comment about the crucial role of EU funding with respect to support initiatives which allowed this exploratory trip to Slovenia as part of an EU operating grant for Children of Prisoners Europe, and allowed to look more closely and in depth in terms of the context when in fact there is no specific NGO working for this group of children within that context. And also with respect to the project that Bea alluded to that was carried out by Rhoda in Croatia, the 2-year project was co-funded by the EU, if I'm correct. I think so, yeah, Ivana. And we saw the decline in visits that happened as a result of the end of that funding stream. So really just to highlight the crucial role of the EU funding in these types of support initiatives.
Thank you for that. I take good note of it, indeed. It is important. As I said at the beginning, I mean, at the level of the EU, on an issue like that, we wouldn't easily be able to legislate, or I mean, it is possibly something which pertains to subsidiarity, but what we can do is to empower you and provide funding and supporting capacity building and this best practice. So this is something very interesting also to take on as a follow-up for our forum conclusions. Maybe also in terms of your advice beyond this session on where is the funding most needed. And monitoring is particularly an interesting point. I also wanted to ask you about, because we heard a lot of excellent national experiences, and they all have in common also this good cooperation and partnership between ministries, NGOs, often the ombuds for children. I believe that the monitoring behind it's also a very important aspect of it. And a question from me as being the outsider is really, I mean, you mentioned in your presentation you need to adapt to the different age of the child. And it was really something I was thinking of before you mentioned it, when I looked at the family-friendly places, spaces that you put in different countries, because I mean, I was thinking I have a 5-year-old, that would be perfect, but if I have to meet Linnea, how can this be organized? So maybe a quick reaction from whoever wants to take the floor.
I personally think that this is a very good idea. We didn't thinking about just when. So we are also in our head that we are talking about the children 5, 6, 7 years, but not that. So this is one thing that we should do in the future for sure. So.
I'd like to comment that we have to think of children, like you said, from 0 to 18, and that contact not necessarily means that you have to travel to a prison and have contact. There are other measures today, and as you know, our young people like to text or Skype or use other methods to be in contact, and we need to do something about to improve the system of contact. It's not only always good for children to travel far, staying every weekend in a prison instead of being in the football club or riding a horse or playing with friends. It could be really stressful for children as well. Yeah. And you can never, and I just like to say that also in frames of contact, I think it's also important that you allow children to speak in their own language. I think speaking of prisoners from other countries and families with other nationalities, it's really important that you can share your emotions, your feelings, and talk with your parents in your own language. That's something we need to do. I just also want to say something about Bea. She said we need a multi-agency approach, and I think that's really crucial for the children. Because we don't know who these children are. So it's important that everyone knows how to treat a child with respect. I also want to stress that you can never assure a child's best interest without speaking to the child or hearing the child. And it's our adult responsibility to find ways to listen to children. It's don't have to be very hard. You can, after a visit, maybe just ask the question, was this a good visit or not? Could we improve to next time? Do you like to be in here? Do you want to do something else? Could we you know, just ask the questions. Take some time. Ensure that everyone wants to be there, because many children are also forced to go into prison. So just ensure that they really are there of free will. Thank you.
Thanks. First of all, just on this language question, because this is something that comes up. And it may not just be foreign nationals, because within some of the countries, the children will be speaking a language other than the national language, or one of the national languages, like Switzerland. But, you know, one of the problems is that sometimes the prison authorities insist that it's got to be in a language that they understand. So I think that is a point that's worth making. How do you expect a child to be able to communicate with a mother or a father in prison, and vice versa, if they're not speaking their language? Secondly, perhaps Nancy could say a bit about the teachers and the program that you've been involved with in sensitizing teachers, because we come back to the whole school business. Thirdly, perhaps we could just touch on the pre-trial detention. And I know we've talked about Sweden in the past, and this is a broader, certainly in the Nordic countries, where quite often the pre-trial detention is quite long and under very restrictive conditions. And, you know, we'd sort of brainstormed that perhaps at least when they are saying that there shouldn't be contact with the outside during the pre-trial period, they should have to make a special application why this should apply to children or children under a certain age, so that, you know, again, you're at least putting the children up front and taking account of their interests. And really, you know, is a baby actually going to be in a position to communicate information to the outside world and interfere with witnesses and whatever, even if it has to be someone other than the parent or another family member who takes them, or whatever? I mean, just to put it like that. Thanks.
Okay, just to follow up on the work that we're doing with schools, a lot of it is recognizing what people in the community, what agencies in the community can do to support children in this situation, because I think, Madeleine, you were saying earlier that the children are in the community, they're not in the prison, and many, I think, Lucia, your presentation as well showed that a lot of people weren't visiting parents in prison, and especially for teenagers, visiting prisons is really boring if you can't have your phone and you can't have your music, and I can't imagine sitting across the table with my children for more than 5 minutes without them wanting to walk out of the room. So it's a really difficult situation. So with teachers, what we're doing is raising awareness of the issues of the impact of imprisonment, but what we're doing is we're taking teachers into prison to experience what a visit is like. So after school, they're called twilight sessions, where we take them in after school to go through the process of having to have your identification and being searched and going into the visits hall. And we actually run the workshop with them in the visits room. So they know what it's like to have the sniffer dogs and the prison guards standing around and so on. And it just opens up the whole discussion about what that's like, and then about what they can do to support young people in their schools, and recognizing that they will have students in their classrooms, even if they don't know it, who are in that situation. And so much of it is just being willing to talk about it and not be afraid to ask them how they're doing, or be afraid to talk about it. So that's something that seems to have caught on, and we talked about it in a number of different, we spoke about it in the COPE conference in Naples this year. And in Dublin as well in September. So yeah, it's just trying to find creative ways of engaging public interest and trying to support kids where they are.
Ivana Zanze from Roda, Croatia, Parents in Action. I would like to emphasize importance of partnership with NGOs, not collaboration, but partnership, because we are activists. and we are those who question authorities, and we are not experts in prison system, but we are experts in mobilizing our community in mainstreaming or normalizing topics, and we are creative in fundings. So our first EU project was funded, that was IPA project, as Lisa mentioned, but priority wasn't child's right, but increase of employment, and we described that if parents in prison are close bonded with their children, after prisoning, their only job is to start find a job. So I think that we all need to be more creative. Of course, it is important to have projects with those priorities, but in this moment there are others EU projects we can stretch the priorities. And
thanks. I think you're right about being creative, but indeed, I mean, you touched on a point which where we started this morning about the intervention of Renate Winter. I mean, and where is the added value? There is also an economic, a business case for this, which is not what we put in the first place, because we are working on human rights, but there is indeed a social economic investment here, so it makes total sense that you apply for this kind of funds. Please.
Thank you. Only to add something about the work with children, and we think that it's important in systemic intervention, because it's difficult direct intervention with children, and also it's important to respect the silence of children, not to force them to tell how they feel and so on. And it's important also organize a discussion with other children, because the most important thing is that they feel alone, and if they can share the experience is the first thing we can do for them.
See, I've been trying to, all the morning, I've been trying to answer to Renate Winter. Okay, I didn't, because it's very difficult to understand which is the added value in, against versus that value, which is absolutely money. So it's very difficult. I'm sorry, I don't have any answer, but I'm still thinking.
I have Baf, I think.
Yes, Camila Orellana from BUF. Some of you have spoken about that children have the right to visit prisons once a week, twice a week, 1 hour, holidays and all this. But are there enough resources in these prisons so that the children, if they want to and can, have the possibility to go? And I'm thinking about enough child-adapted rooms, enough time to go and visit, because the children can only visit in the weekends. But then some of the children have to wait several weeks because the room is already booked. So are there enough resources? Because we have to think about the practical things also, not just what are the rights. Thank you.
It helps you to answer, please.
My name is Panagiotis Panagiotopoulos. I'm a prosecutor of Prosecutor Office of First Instance Thessaloniki, Greece. I would like to say that we do not need money always. I will give you an example. In one of Greece prisons, prison of Krevena, a room for kids to visit their father who is in prison, a playroom, was constructed with no money by the state. The playroom was painted by a prisoner for no money. The prisoner painted the room with paints for children. Then the furniture was by donation from people of the region. And the toys who were given in the room, kids who visit take with them some of these toys, were donated by the staff of the prison, including me, who I'm a supervisor of the prison. So, if we want to do something, we can make it without money. Thank you.
Gifts are money.
Not against the state budget. The toy that I will give, my toy for my children, is a gift, okay, but the state has no problem with this.
This is a matter.
The building is a good money. All the people working is a good money.
So if you speak out the microphone, it doesn't work.
Eduardo.
Money is there.
The microphone.
Oh, sorry. I said that is small money. Yeah, we understand that the manufacturer of toys are ready to give toys on, special occasion during the year and so forth. The inmates paint the walls, yes, of course. But I think that the money, I'm still thinking about Renata and her question. I think that the money is how many people do work there. A provocative, I would like to say a provocative thing. For the money, we need a lot more inmates, a lot more prisons. Yes, for the money. If you want to run the money, you build more prisons, you have more people working there, jobs. It sounds very good. See how it sounds good? More jobs, more buildings to build. It's a provocation, of course, but
I think it is. I think I'll take one intervention and then I'll ask Nancy to try and wrap it up.
Okay, I'll respond to Eduardo, although I actually, as well as here. No, because you actually make more jobs with social work and probation and the alternatives, which are require more people, more resources, but much cheaper than prisons and building prisons and so on. So I think that's the answer on that one. I think one of the issues here is that not all prisons have individual visit rooms like you have in Sweden.
Yeah, okay.
And so yes, I can see why you see this as an issue in Sweden, but I think that then also comes back to these alternative means of communication. And our concern about those is that they don't become substitutes that the prison system uses, because it's less work for them to have a Skype or a video link than to actually have people physically coming. But as long as these are options that are chosen by, in this case, the children, then that's great.
I don't know if I'll have any success wrapping this up at all, but I think you raise an important point, Rachel, because we have seen that happen in the US in particular, where video links have replaced contact visits, and the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child was very clear that these should not replace but should supplement. But I think there are other issues as well. I think the point that things can be done without money is an important point. You don't always need lots of money to do good things, but it helps a lot, especially in terms of making sure an NGO is available to provide support, in terms of making sure we have means of learning from each other. It takes money to come here, for example. But it's also looking at the opportunities we have for families. It costs money for the families to visit prisons, so it's great if the prisons can provide wonderful resources and lots of visits available to families, but if the families can't afford to use that, We need to find ways of supporting them, you know, looking at the practical implications for all these wonderful things. But one thing I want to pick up on, that I want to end on really, that Bernardica, yeah, thank you, pronouncing it totally wrong, sorry, was that you said we can't do it without each other. And I think that's the biggest message that we can take out of this. In your presentation, Bernardica, you used a graphic that Children of Prisoners Europe designed with all the circles of the different organizations involved. You referred to the San Francisco Bill of Rights for Children of Imprisoned Parents. You referred to the Italian Memorandum of Understanding, which I know Croatia is looking at, but so is Portugal, so is Argentina. You know, there's a lot of ways that we can use learning from other organizations and membership of Europris, things like that. Meetings like this are so important to learn that good practice, to share the good practice and not feel we have to start by ourselves and do this alone. So it sounds rather grand, but it's just important to remember that and take these messages home to take into practice within your own countries.
Thank you for these final words. Before we go to the lunch, I just wanted to also thank someone who is behind us and has been drawing a beautiful graphic expression of what has been said by this panel. So I also invite you to have a look once it's going to be in the plenary. Thank you so much. I think it really adds value to, and I thank you to you all. I realize this is an issue which should go out of this room. I mean, in this room, I hear a lot of experts. It's the fourth time we met. My intention would be to make a summary of these deliberations and bring it possibly to the Council of Ministers or to the Council Working Group dealing with fundamental rights and rights of the child, so that we can also share the good work that NGOs, but also some of your ministries are doing with all the member states, because indeed it is an issue which concern all of us, and it should be out of the usual suspects. So I think that is what I could promise you I'm going to promote. Thank you very much. Thank you.